today we are going to be flying out in this wonderful Pilatus PC-12. Now, this has been out for a while from Carenado. It was plagued with a little bit of issues in the beginning, specifically with some frame rate issues using their sort of like in-cockpit system. It's sort of like I don't want to call it an add-on, but it's unique. And it's been out for a while, and we're going to do a flight today to see how it's performing, if there's still frame rate issues, and also I want to go over how to actually fly this aircraft, because I've seen some tutorials that are, I don't want to say necessarily incorrect, but it's a little inaccurate when it comes to power settings and actually how to fly it. Now, I personally, just as, you know, disclaimer, have not flown one of these, and don't take my word for gospel. But I have done a pretty good amount of research on this aircraft and watched quite a few in real life videos that they go through step-by-step tutorials on how they actually fly them. One that I recommend checking out is, his name is Gene. I can't remember his last name, but if you search for Gene Pilatus PC-12, it'll come up, and he has some fantastic videos of flying this legacy version and also the NG version, which is the next generation version, which is a little bit more powerful and has a little bit updated cockpit. So with that being said, there's no real need to go over the outside, just because this is of typical Carenado fashion. I think everybody knows at this point that they are always spot on with their textures, and everything looks fantastic. The one that I chuckle right now, because the one thing that this aircraft always reminds me of, especially when you look at it like at this like little 3/4 angle here, it looks like a Pixar character to me. So like a cartoon animation character with that big nose and that intake being a little smiley face there. Just makes me laugh every single time. But we're going to go ahead and hop on in. We are in live weather. There's been showers rolling throughout the day, so we want to get our passengers on board, get fired up, and get on into the air. Okay, so we have boarded the aircraft. We'll pretend there's passengers on board. I wish that was a more consistent thing, like Flight Simulator Cessna 414 actually has passengers back there. Latin VFR does passengers. It just adds a little bit of fun to it. But it is a beautiful looking cabin. We do have some good interactions in here. These reading lights and floodlights can come on from cockpit controls. We do have tray tables that can come out and shutters that can come down. There's also a cargo door back here that can open up, which is nice to see. I always love those little touches. It just helps add to a little bit of fun and immersion to the aircraft itself. And you did see on the outside we had the static elements on, so the tow bar, the external power, and you know our covers and cones and such. So we're going to go through kind of abbreviated checklist, but relatively thorough, just because this aircraft does have quite a few toggles and switches that I'd like to explain at least what they would do in the real aircraft, and also what they're going to do in here. So let's go ahead and start our before starting engine checklist. So before we go through any of the checklists, I do want to mention that you can download all the documentation from Carenado's website. I'll put a link down below that has everything from your normal procedures, emergency procedures, how to operate this guy down here. I always forget the name of it. It's the AviDyne. Yeah, AviDyne. And the functionality with the autopilot. So there's a lot of information that is available, and you can download it right off their webpage. So definitely go get that. I'm pretty much just going to be looking off of those checklists to get things fired up. And by the looks of things, for this version, they've basically copied the official POH for it. So it is very detailed as far as the checklist goes, but there's some steps that aren't going to be sort of replicated in the sim. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing that I want to mention is one of the checklists for the cabin is that you need to turn off the fuel emergency handle here. So you want that to actually be down. If you don't have that down, you'll fire up the engine, be like, why aren't I getting any power when you go to put it into ground idle? And that would be the reason why. So make sure that is down. Then our seats are fine, seatbelts are fine. We're going to go ahead and get our batteries on. So we have 1 and 2 battery there. We do have external power available because I have it turned on in the tablet, which I'll show you down here. And we can turn off those static elements as well before we get fired up. So we'll get rid of the tow bar and static elements. Tow bar and static elements are off. External power is on. So we can have a little bit more time going over things and not worry about battery drain here, because we want that to be at least 24, which it is. So from there, we're just going to do some checks. Landing gear is fine. Fuel contents are going to be fine. This is a little interesting because typically Carenado has very loud fuel pumps. You're supposed to test those by switching into the on position, and they do not make any audible noise. So that's a little interesting. If you turn them to on, the annunciator light will go out. When they are on auto, you will see them in green. From there, we want to get our oxygen lever on, and then back behind our seat here, we do have our oxygen gauge. We wanted that to be 1850 or higher. I don't think this actually goes down at all if you turn on oxygen. We have our passenger oxygen switch here, and ours, I believe, is that one there. And I haven't remembered to check to see if that goes down, but I'm doubtful that it does. From there, we are good to, let's see, that's a whole bunch of oxygen. We'll be moving to our engine starting checklist. All right, so our engine starting checklist, this will be the same with or without external power. We've already checked our fuel quantity. Our EIS system, which is your electronic instrument system, is here. We want to just test that, which click on that guy there, and that is all fine. Then our propeller area, we just want to make sure is clear, which it is. One thing that isn't modeled in here, which would be nice, is this little sliding window. Typically, Carenado does have interactions with the pilot's windows, but for some reason, this one is not. But to start up the engine, it's very, very easy. Come up here, and you're going to hit the start button. You're going to start to hear it kind of spool up, spin. Now, if at any point that something was to go wrong, typically you would have your hand hovered over this starter interrupt, and you'd click that, and it would stop the startup sequence immediately to stop any damage to the engine. So it's nice that they actually have that modeled in there. But we'll go ahead and get that on to start. And what we're looking here is between 13 and 20% on our NG. And we are good there. Now on our condition lever, so there's no mixture in this, but we do have a condition lever. So we just want to move that up to ground idle, which will ident into its little slot there. And you'll see that this will start to ramp up there. Once we get that all stabilized, it should stabilize above 50%. And we're good there. We can go ahead and come up here and pop on our generators. They are good to go. And from here, we can go ahead and turn off our external power, and we'll disconnect it from the aircraft. We'll go ahead and turn on our pilots as well. From here, we'll get our avionics on. I do have the GTN750 installed, which makes everything a lot nicer to flight plan and everything, but as far as functionality of the aircraft goes, I think it comes with the 530 is great. This you can get as a free version from PMS 50, so I definitely suggest getting that at the very least, because it does integrate well, and this is also the working title version, which has even more accurate features in there. From there, we can turn off our standby lights, and our inertia separator is on. Our probe heat, which is our pitot heat, is on. We'll go ahead and put our windshield heat onto lights. We can test to make sure that those are coming on. We also have our lamp test over here. Turn on, check our annunciator panels and all our other sort of sections there to make sure they are good, which they are. We're going to test our autopilot, which is, I always just kind of find this fun. So you're going to test the annunciator panel to make sure all that lights up. And then we're going to take our heading indicator, which is here, and you'll align it and then just go ahead and turn it over, you know, roughly 30 degrees. And then we're going to engage the autopilot and turn on heading mode. And we want to see that the yoke is going to turn and our flight director is turning as well. And then we want to test that we can actually brake it by turning the yoke over, and we were able to do so. So autopilot, you can check all directions if you wanted to, but autopilot is working fine. So we'll go ahead and turn off all of that there, realign our heading mode, and that is your autopilot tested. From there, we have a pusher, which is kind of a cool unit. What it does is this yoke will vibrate as you're coming into stall, and then it will push forward to get that nose down to kind of, you know, give you your best chance of success of not stalling. So we have a pusher test button here, or if we push it, we can see that that does actually go, and then we'll watch it push in there. Now you can override that. So say you're flying and you're like, no, do not push the nose down. If you hold back on the yoke, it will not push forward, and you want to test that. You can see it just put it to neutral. It did not push back at all. Once you let go, it just kind of bobbles a little bit there. So the pusher is working as it should. External lights, we are good. And after that, we could really go ahead and do our taxi. But next step, we're going to get our flight plan into the GTN750. Right now in our flight plan, I just have us going from Catalina to Sedona, no en route waypoints. The reason I've loaded it this way is I kind of wanted to show you a fun way to put in airways. So if we come over to our flight plan that I have in Navigraph, for some reason, there it goes. Now it's loaded. We're here at Catalina. We're coming over to Seal Beach VOR. Then we're going to head over to the Thermal VOR, to Blythe, then to Buckeye, and up to Sedona. So if you notice, this is a Victor Airway. What Victor Airway means, it's from basically a VOR to a VOR. They're going to be below 18,000 feet. You can see this has a minimum flight level of 7,000 feet. So what we can do to eliminate putting in different waypoints and things like that is we can come over to the GTN 750. Our first waypoint is Seal Beach, so we're going to pop that in. It's going to be the closest one to us. Then what we can do is we can click on Seal Beach and then load airway. And when we load up the airway, it'll bring up a whole bunch of different options that are all the airways that hit Seal Beach. Now, we are looking for Victor 64. We'll pop that in. And then on the... it takes a little while to load sometimes on there. It'll bring up all of the points on that airway. Now, I like to think of this as like getting on, you know, like the interstate. So we got on at SLI, but where do we want to get off? And if we come down, we want to get off at Blythe, which is there. So if we go ahead and click on that one, you can see it's like, oh, okay, that's Victor 64. There is a turn in there, but we don't need to put in anything else, and we can just go load. And there we go. We've got all of those waypoints all in up to Blythe. Now from Blythe, we have another airway that we're going to pick up, which is Victor 16. And that one, you know, we're hopping on at Blythe, and we want to exit at Buckeye. So Buckeye is that one. And then we can go ahead and pop that in and load again. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but it will load in that airway and we will be good to go on our flight plan. There it is. So really all we have to worry about is what approach we want to do once we get close, and it might even be a visual approach. So, but that is all in as a GPS route. So if we go back to our map, we want to make sure that our CDI is on GPS and not on VLOC. So we are good there. We're also going to go ahead and get our altitude set. We're going to go up to 17,000 feet, and let's make it 16,000. Also on here, we can go view charts and select info, airport info, and we've got our little map here to have a look. So we can watch ourselves taxi down or really know which way we need to go. Also, we can even get all the Unicom information and anything else that you need from there. This will also have all the approach charts, SID stars, all sorts of charts in there as well. All right, so we are good to go ahead and get our taxi underway. Here we are lined up on runway 4, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about takeoff and what we need to do. So we have our torque and we have our ITT. Now our torque, we want to bring that up slowly. Think this just is your throttle. We just want to bring that up nice and slowly, paying attention to our ITT and our torque. It's okay to sort of get up to max as long as you're staying really underneath 800 ITT. Now I like to, if I'm getting even close to that 800, I like to back off the torque because you're not really going to get more than maximum even backing off a little bit. All you're going to be doing is increasing your ITT, and that might be, you know, like 98% NG, something like that. But that is going to be a much happier engine instead of starting to get a beep when you get over 800 ITT. Now once we take off, we'll get a positive rate of climb, we'll get our gear up. Once we hit 100 knots, we can go ahead and raise up our flaps as long as we're 400 feet above the ground, which we will be because there's essentially a cliff right there. And then we need to reduce that torque down. Really around 30 to 36 is going to give us the right amount of temperature, which really we want to be around 760. Some pilots will go as low as 720. And we're going to let our airspeed increase up to 150 knots. And that's when we'll go ahead and make sure that our indicated airspeed is going to be locked for our climb and that our autopilot is turned on. And then that's what we climb out for the entire way. That's going to be more of what we call a cruise climb, and is going to be roughly, we want to see around 2,000 feet per minute. And I will adjust my torque values off of there to get roughly around that 2,000. And as we're climbing, we might need to increase our throttle a little bit as we go up. We don't have a mixture, so there's nothing to adjust there. What we do need to make sure before we take off, though, is that we go from ground idle up to flight idle. You'll hear that kind of kick in. We want to make sure that our trim is set, which on here I like to have, so we're looking at this guy here, this bottom part just above that green area there to give us a nice, you know, we don't have to apply a ton of backwards pressure, and it will not dip the nose too much on us when we start to, you know, get settled in. So other than that, we've got our lights all set up, landing lights on, nav on, wing on, strobe on, beacon on, recognition, fuel pumps to auto. Our icing is set to just light windshield, inertia separator is on, probes on, our seatbelt sign and no smoking signs are on, and we are good to go there. Fuel quantities are fine, pressures and temperatures are fine. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to pop off that parking brake real quick here, and I'm going to hold the brakes. We're just going to let that start to spool up, and again, we want to just bring this in slowly. I like to look out the main window most of the time. There's a little bit of wind going on. And then just start to bring in that throttle slowly. So like right about there, we're good at max torque. I didn't have to go full throttle. You can go ahead and rotate. But nice and smooth. Tap the brakes, gear coming up. We're at 100 knots. Flaps can come up, and we can already bring that torque back down, lowering that nose a little bit. And just watching that airspeed, because we want that to come down to, come up to 150 knots. So right about there. And then we can go ahead and click on the autopilot and our indicated airspeed. And now we're going to climb out nicely. You can see it's catching up to our flight director there. It should settle back down to 150 as we get that climb. And we can adjust that as needed here with nose up or nose down. So that's looking pretty good where I clicked it on at. And you can see we are, we were climbing up pretty quick there, but it's going to start to balance out right around that 2000. There we go. We're set up pretty nice. We could bring back the power just a little bit because we're at 780. If we bring that back down, I like being closer to 760, which is right at that sort of yellow arc. Right around there will be fine for our initial climb. And let's go ahead and get our heading mode over so we can join on to our flight plan. Okay, so we just had our 1,000-foot warning annunciator beep go off, and you can see, I could bring up the power a little bit more, but we're going to be leveling off. We don't, same again, I really like being in that 760 range. You don't want to go higher than that. Now, we're going to level off here. You can see that that's coming down. We're going to level off at 16,000 feet. Now, there's a couple different ways you can set your cruise in this aircraft, and Carenado gives us a performance chart. So let me bring that up. So these are all the documents that you get from Carenado. So they do give you a lot of different ones to look at. But we want to look at the performance tables. So they give us two tables. One is maximum cruise and one is long range cruise. So we're at 16,000 feet. We come over and we look, they want torque value at 35.5, and then it gives us what our expected fuel burn will be, and then our speeds for indicated and true. Now that will be at minus 11 degrees outside temperature, minus 17. So we'll come back in, it's 35.5. So let's just check our outside temperature. I always forget where it is on this aircraft. Oh, it's on the main panel. So we're at outside temperature at minus 18. So that is very, very close to what they are saying we should be at as far as temperatures for that chart. So they say 35.5. So let's go ahead and advance that up. All right, so we'll call that good. And notice what maximum cruise is doing. It's getting us at the limit, maximum, right? So you don't really want to go above that. We're not in the yellow here. We're just butting up against the yellow there, but we're still in that 760 range. Now, as far as our indicated airspeed, we're doing 205. They say on the chart at 16,000 feet are indicated 208, right? So we're right in the ballpark. Our true airspeed 268. So let's go. Nice way to check that is on the GTN750, which I didn't realize you could do until there was an update that came out, which is nice. You come over here, and if you just pop in the use sensor data, it's going to pick up everything. And our current true airspeed is 264. So let's go back and have a look. And they are saying that our true airspeed 268. So same again, right in that ballpark, which is very accurate for the flight model of this Carenado Pilatus PC-12. They, you know, get a bad rap for saying, oh, well, things aren't accurate in them, they don't tune it, they just slap the same default stuff on there. Well, we just proved that wrong, because this is on the money. I mean, it's slightly off due to 1 degree in temperature, but that is very well done. So let's try it on the other end. So say we want to actually have less fuel burn. So at 16,000 feet, outside temperature, same again, we're 1 degree difference, so not a big deal there. But we need to bring it all the way down to 20.4. Let's bring our torque down to 20.4. All right, we'll call that good. Now, if we have a look, we need this to give it a little bit of time to settle. You can see that's coming down. But as far as our temperatures go, you can see our ITT is now down at 665, which is, you know, very happy. Our NG is at 83.5%. And our torque is right where we want it to be at 20.5. It's still dropping a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. So our our true airspeed is listed at 226, and our indicated is at 166-ish. So let's go check that. So performance chart for long range cruise. Come on over. We're at 20.5, but 20.4 is what they're quoting. Very, very close. They're showing that our indicated airspeed should be 166, which it is, and our true airspeed at 216. That's still coming down as everything settles, but same again, right in the ballpark. So that is super important to make sure that you're tuning this. Now, you can do in between those. There's no reason why you have to do one or the other. You can just do it based off of how much fuel burn you want to use. So right now our fuel burn is 325, which I think the fuel burns are a little bit off on here, but let's see here. They're saying 335 pounds per hour. So, I mean, very, very close again. But if you wanted to, you know, get a little bit more speed, you can just bring it up. You don't have to go to max. You can just say, oh, you know, let's go up to 30 on our torque, and just let it cruise along there. And then that's, if you've watched some of my other videos, I call the Goldilocks, right? You're kind of in the middle. And then we're obviously going to be getting higher fuel burn, but now our airspeed is going to keep on ticking up, and life is good. So we're just going to cruise along here. One thing that we can do already is we can calculate our descent. So we come over to VNAV. What is the altitude of Sedona? I think it's roughly around 4,000 feet. Let's double check that out real quick here. So we just go to info on the airport here. Airport info, there it is. 4,700. So we want to be like, let's say 6,800 feet, so 2,000 above the ground. Let's go back over here to our VNAV. Now, this doesn't have a VNAV autopilot, which is fine, but we can come over here and we want to say that, what did I say, 6,800 feet? MSL, vertical speed profile, let's just do 800. Nothing too aggressive. Let's do that so that we are about 4 miles out from the airport. You can see here it's saying, all right, begin descent in basically an hour, 53 minutes. If we were to start a descent now, we would need to descend at 134 feet per minute, and that would get us 4 miles out there. So for 800 feet per minute, we need to start in 53 minutes. And if we turn on display messages, it'll give us a message once we are approaching that descent. So this one is just saying we're arriving at our waypoint. So we are set above the clouds. Life is good. Let's double check the radar, make sure life is going to stay good. Weather radar. Not picking up anything there. There we go. We got some stuff coming in. Now let's check where that is vertically. We're above it. So we are good, looking great. And we'll just keep on going. I'll check in once we are going to start our descent. As we're cruising along here, I just wanted to talk about the AviDyne unit real quick. I don't typically use this because I use the GTN750, but if you have the 530, this does provide quite a bit of functionality for you. Like you can display traffic, which if you're using the working title 530, it will as well. But we do have a radar there, which works out pretty well. You can also overlay the weather data on the map itself. Now this seems very cluttered, so if you wanted to, you could go over to the aux and set up your decluttering, and you can also come over to your nearest and have a look at different airports and bring up the actual airport information with frequencies, runways, all that good stuff. And then our trip is actually our flight plan that we have in, and you can get a little bit more information on here as well, as far as like ETAs and times and all that good stuff, distances. So it's a cool unit. It's definitely functioning fine. I haven't had any issues. I usually just have it turned on and either leave it on the map or turn down the brightness and call it good. But that's the AviDyne. I think that's what a lot of people were sort of having issues with in the beginning. I personally did not experience those issues, but I honestly didn't fly this aircraft all that much because I typically like to fly down there instead of up here, and we're at low level for this aircraft. Okay, so we just got our first message here. So if we clicked on that, you can see it says approaching top of descent. I tuned the bottom unit to the VNAV profile, so you can see it says begin descent in 45 seconds. Let's go ahead and bring this on over and get our selector tuned. And then really once that, you don't have to be dead on, but we're going to actually descend at vertical speed, where climbing we did indicated airspeed. So we're going to click on vertical speed and then make this 800. And down we go. Sedona is like on this little plateau, and it's surrounded by a couple of pretty steep peaks. So flying into there is beautiful, but it can be challenging. I'm gonna go ahead and reduce our speed down a little bit though, because it is going pretty quick. We're fine as far as our temps and everything, but I just like to keep things balanced so that way when we come in, it's not going to be as crazy, to try and get our speeds under control. I'll just bring us down to right around there. Because if we go back and have a look now, and we're still doing 278 knots across the ground. So looking out the window, unfortunately, we have some pockets of rain, but we do have a nice rainbow. So looking at the weather radar, we are definitely going to be flying through it. Let's come in a little bit. Yeah, so that's going to be a little bit of a mess. So let's see here. We are outside temperature -8. I already have our prop heat on because we ran through some clouds earlier. I'm going to switch our windshield heat to heavy. And really I'm just going to keep an eye on our wings, make sure that there is no ice buildup as we start to enter in here. Man, that is very nice looking. We've actually got a double rainbow. Not sure if you guys are familiar with that. It was a sort of viral video that went back a little ways about a guy super excited about double rainbows. But how cool is that? I don't think I've seen them that vibrant in the sim yet, but very, very cool indeed. Slowing us down here. We changed our descent rate down to about 600 feet per minute, which, if we check our guide here, is still fine. We should be going a little bit steeper than that, but that gets us 4 miles out from the airport at 6,800, so we've got just a little bit left to go. That wind's going to start messing with us too. Yeah, we've still got pretty strong winds going here. All right, let's see what happens. I'll touch base with you guys as we're hopefully getting a visual on the runway. Okay, so I do have a good visual on the runway. It's right here. And as expected, 6,800 feet, 4 nautical miles out. Worked out perfectly. So I'm going to disengage the autopilot. Look at how that just opened up. Perfect. And we're going slow enough that I can actually put our landing gear down. And our first notch of flaps, I believe, is at 162. So I'm going to try and slow us down even more. There we go. There's 175. Bring that throttle back. There we go. First notch of flaps coming in. Try and get us slowed down here. It's been quite a little adventure. Alright, so I'm just kind of trimming us out here. Speeds are looking good. Now this airport is always deceiving to me. That's because I don't have my gear down yet. There we go. It does that once you get inside the white arc. It will start beeping at you if you don't have your landing gear down. Alright, so we're going to come up here and we're going to pop off our prop heat. We'll pop those down to light. Everything else we can keep the same. Landing gear down. I do have my landing light on. Speeds are good. We're right at 100 knots. What you want to do with this aircraft is match your speed to this angle of attack. I find it extremely difficult though, so because that'll have you descending appropriately at the right speed. But I'm a little low. I don't like it. Don't like it. See, according to the populates, I'm high. That's what I mean. This airport is always deceiving because it's on that plateau. What a cool little spot, though. I'm just watching my airspeed and adjusting throttle as need be. Landing gear is down. We still have another notch of flaps to introduce once I get onto final. Go ahead and introduce that. What's that wind doing? See, it's doing pretty good. We got a 13 knot, pretty much headwind now at this point, which is what I was hoping for. It's pushing us a little off to the side, though. So if you watch some of my other videos, you can tell normally I'm quite calm coming into land. This one is definitely getting me a little excited here. All right, come to idle over the numbers. We've got it into beta, so if we need to do any reverse thrust, we can. I don't think we're going to need to. Turned into the wind. Right rudder. Oof. Look at that. We are good. All right, flaps coming up. And taking us down to ground idle. Overall, I'd say that was, at least to me anyways, that was a blast. So, final thoughts on the Pilatus PC-12 after it's gone through all its updates. I'm going to pop on the parking brake here. That was a lot of fun. I ran into no issues. Power settings were spot on for the performance charts. All the radars, all the functionality worked great. The only things that I'd say that are missing from this is that the cause system here doesn't necessarily work very well with what you have reflected on your overhead or some other errors. We do have toggle switches that are basically inoperable, but you can still click them. It just does nothing. So it would be nice to have at least some implementation there. But overall, this has been a joy to fly. It is fast. It is fun. I would say if you don't already own it, it's definitely worth the purchase. If you do own it and have been reluctant to fly it because it was having issues in the beginning, I have no issues whatsoever. There's no problems running this the entire flight. Frame rate never dipped or dropped, and it is just a very cool aircraft. And really, to shut this thing down, all you're going to do is just bring back your condition lever down to your idle cutoff, and then we're going to click through and turn off all our avionics and lights and all that good stuff. So but we won't go through that today. I just want to say thank you for joining me on this very fun and beautiful flight, and until next time, take care.